Hakadosh Boker Or, Masechet Sotah Daf, Memvav Amud Aleph 46a1. We're going to start on Memhei Amud Bet, the Mishnah again. So there's a new topic. We're going to go very quickly. Niftiru Ziknei Yerushalayim Valchu Lahen, right? Or, right? Then Ziknei Toyid, Mevin Eglat Bakara Shalom Shecha Beol Ve'en Amum Posel Ba. So after they came and they already did the Medidah, right? That means they came and they started checking which city was the closest city to do the Eglat Ufa. Remember, somebody passed away, right? Somebody was murdered, right? And therefore, what happened is that now they come and they have to check, which city has to bring the Eglat Ufa. So the Sanhedrin Agdolah, they went, right? And then the Ziknei Ayotayir, which is the Dayanim of that Bedin, would bring an Eglat Bakara Shalom Shechabol, and the mum is not posel, which means that even though this animal has a blemish, there's no problem with the blemish. It's only a problem of that it cannot work. Shalom Shechabol, it never worked. They bring it down to Nachal Etan. Etan, what does it mean? Etan? Etan is kemashmau kasher, which means which means even though it's not going to be hard, right? It's still going to be okay. Here Rashi actually says that it's like there's a lot of slaim. That means it's not fitting for zriyah, okay, because it's a very hard place, meaning there's a lot of stones and things like that. It's very difficult to start coming and planting. Gorfinota, so you cut the animal by its neck on the back. That's an orif. Now we are called an amkeshe orif. Where's the orif? The nape. The nape is the back of the head. So therefore they used to come, right? Yarof, right? So that's a orif. They used to come and cut off the animal from the back of its neck, right? Bekofitz, with a very big, thick saw, a knife, okay, of butchers. Me'achorea, from the back part of the tzavara. Mekoma, right? Now, once they come and they do this Eglat Ufa, asur nizroa min avod. You're not allowed to ever plant or work this place. Meaning, let's say they did the right in a certain place in wherever it was. From that place can never be again planted or plowed or anything. Nizroa min avod. Mutar lisrok sham pishtan ulakesh sham. But you are allowed to comb flax, or you're allowed to take away stones from that place. Right, so therefore the elders of the city, they wash their hands, right, with water in the place of the Eglat Ufa. And they say, Yadenu lo shafechu et adam hazeh. Yeah, you remember what the word this is, yeah? So he says, our hands did not spill this blood, and our eyes did not see. So ask the Mishnah, what, do we have a Havamina? Do you think that we actually thought that it was a Ziknei Bedin that came and killed this guy? Well, they have to come and say, no, we didn't do it. Well, you didn't do it. Obviously, you didn't do it. So he says, Ela shelo ba'al yadenu patrun. No, he didn't come to us, and we sent him away without money, without mazon, without food. Or we didn't come and see him, and we didn't accompany him. Then the Kohanim come and they say, right, that you're going to atone for your nation Israel, which you've redeemed, and you're not going to put innocent blood amongst Bnei Yisrael. They didn't have to say Nikapel Lehem Adam. It's Ruach HaKodesh that said Nikapel Lehem Adam. When you guys do this action, meaning this form, Hadam Yitkapel Lehem. So then the blood is going to be your atonement. Okay, that's a Mishnah. Okay, this is where we're starting today, because we already did this Mishnah on Friday. So says the Gemara, so what did we just say? We just said you could bring an Eglat Ufa. The Eglat Ufa, right? The Egel is a Shalom Shecha Be'ol, which means you cannot work it, but there's no problem of a mum. It can have a blemish. So the question is, 1 second, mum posel be'egla. The mum should be a defect for it. Why? Kal v'chomer. Uma para, just like the para aduma, which is lighter, she'ena shanim poslot ba, that it doesn't matter how many years, meaning the para aduma, there's a shiur lemata, but not lemala, meaning there's the minimum age, but there's not a maximum age by a para aduma. And therefore it comes and he says, ena shanim poslot ba, mum posel ba, it is posel. So he comes and it says, 1 second, right? He says over here, Egla sheshanim poslot ba, an Eglat Ufa, that it is, right? Because it has to be within the first year, an Eglat Ufa. That's why it's an Egel. It's not a para. Para is above. It has to be minimum, right? Shanat mima. But after that, it could be 10 years of para aduma. 15 years, 20 or whatever it is. It doesn't, lemala, there's no shiur, meaning above, there's no age limit. But below, there's an age limit. But if you're going to tell me by the paraduma that there's no age limit on the top, and still it's going to be posel with a mum, kal v'chomer here, the eglar ufa, that there is an age limit upwards, that after a year, right, nigmar sipur, right, chalal baraka, it stops there. So he says, eno din she mum posel ba. Shouldn't it be that right now a mum should disqualify it? Answers the Gemara, Shane Hatam, it's different over there. The Merkabah's Pasuk says, Asherem bah mum. When it says the word bah mum posel, ve'en mum posel be'egla. Since it says Asherem bah mum, that it doesn't have an it, a mum, only by paraduma it cannot have a mum. Meaning a paraduma cannot have a blemish. If it has a blemish, it's not good paraduma. But mashma only paraduma, but not anything else. What's the other thing that is coming to exclude? Eglarufa. The eglarufa is allowed to have a mum. Okay, so ask the Gemara, Elamiata. So if you're going to tell me that it says bah, so lo yushar avodot poslo bah. So therefore, all the other avodot should also not posel in the paraduma, right? Why? Because all the other avodot poslo be paraduma is not written in the pasuk. It's learned from a kavachomer, from eglarufa. So therefore, since right now you're learning from the eglarufa and it's written bah, so it's coming to exclude the eglarufa. So therefore, be'emet, it should be mutar to work. Paraduma. Alama Rav Yudah Marav. So why does it Rav Yudah say in Rav? If you come and you place on top of the paraduma an udashil sakin, which is like a chavila, it's like a package of sackcloth srekim, even if they're empty, but they're tied together, sula, it's going to be pasul from paraduma. And by the egla, it's still going to be kosher until you pull it, until you start pulling the animal. So now 1 second. You see from here the placing a masa, placing a burden, right? Chutz me'ol, lo hayta tzicha lifsol beparaduma at all. Because the milah ba is written by eglarufa, is by other avodot, which is memaetet. So it's teaching us the paraduma enem poslot, right? So basically the question is, if you only learn from the paraduma, from the eglarufa, you're not allowed to work it. But why? It says ba. It's only paraduma. Paraduma is special. It's not the same thing. So answers the Gemara, Shane parad yalfinan all megla. Paraduma, you learn a gzera shava, all from eglarufa. Meaning all the other avodot, they learn from the gzera shava from all. And therefore, right, since it says all, it's not because of the ba. You're right. If it was only written the ba, umum and ba, so it's coming to exclude the eglarufa. The eglarufa has no problem of a mum. What about the avodah by the paraduma? Says no, that you learn it from another gzer shava, all. When it says the shalom mashecha be'ol, right, and that it doesn't have an all, so therefore what happens? We learn that what? That it cannot have any type of work. Okay, so the Gemara is going to ask, 1 second, linyan egla nami teiti all mi para. Why are you only going one way? You should also go the other way also. All from the paraduma, which means it's a two-way street. Here we're only going one-way street. One more time. To do with the concept of a mum, even though paraduma and eglarufa are the same, we excluded it. Why? Because it says the word ba by the paraduma. And it says mefurash by paraduma cannot have a mum. So since it says only ba, so it's ba, the paraduma, it cannot have a mum. But by the eglarufa, it can have a mum. So the Gemara says, so how do you know that you're not allowed to work the paraduma? It says it's a gzera shava, all from the eglarufa. It says Shalom mashecha be'ol by paraduma, so by the eglarufa. So I'm learning that to the paraduma. So says the Gemara, learn a two-way street. If it says all, just like I learned paraduma that you cannot work from eglarufa, I should learn eglarufa cannot have a mum from paraduma. So answers the Gemara, Hamiyet Rachman Abba. Says no, it's not a two-way street because it says mefurash ba velo mashu acher, means only in the paraduma you cannot have a mum, but not anything else. So for since I have a special limud, a special mi'ut is an exclusion to do with the concept of what? That I'm not going to have, right? You're not allowed to have a mum. So it's only the paraduma cannot have a mum, but not anything else. So says the Gemara, 1 second. Be'egla nami kativ ba. It's also written the word ba by the eglarufa. So therefore, if you're going to now tell me that it's written also by the eglarufa ba, so therefore maybe it's only by the eglarufa that you cannot work it. Not by the paraduma. You wanted to make a gzera shava all, right? I can't make a gzera shava. Why? It says ba by the eglarufa. So it's only by the eglarufa that you can't work it. Maybe by the paraduma you can't work it. So he says, no. The word ba, by eglarufa, haumi ba ele yunid lemiute kochim, de la pasla behu avodah. You're coming to exclude kochim, right? That it's not going to be pasul by avodah, which means avodah is not posel by kochim. Be'ema that was done in avodah, you're allowed to bring on the mizbeach, right? Meaning, you're bringing a sacrifice. We're not talking about paraduma and eglarufa. Eglarufa was not on a sacrifice, yeah? Eglarufa was a service that we had to do, right? But you're bringing a korban. When you bring a korban, can you bring an animal that you worked? You just worked with this animal. Can you bring it? Yes. There's no issue. Paraduma, you're not allowed to, right? And eglarufa, you're not allowed to. But any other animal, you can bring any other animal for us, as long as it doesn't have a blemish. If it doesn't have a moon, you're allowed. Well, no, bechor, you're right. Bechor is a special din bechor. You're not allowed to work bechor. You're right. Right? But that's korban bechor. But I'm saying, but a regular korban, I'm going to bring an olah, shlamim, chatat, all these asham. You're allowed to work the animal.
Kodashim, no?
Yeah, all kodashim, because they're all kodashim. Kodashim are all the different, right? Chatat, olah, those are kodesh kodashim. Right? So therefore, there's no problem. So he says, I would have thought to say, I would have thought to say I can make a kavachomer from eglarufa. Just like eglarufa shemum posel ba, the mum is not posel. Remember, we just said that you're allowed to have a mum by eglarufa. Why? Because it was only by the paraduma you're not allowed to have a mum. Not by eglarufa. Eglarufa, you're allowed to have a mum. So he says, avodah posel ba, and avodah is posel. So kodshim shemum posel bahem, enodin shavodah yipasel bahem. Means like this, we wanted to make a kavachomer. Eglarufa, are you allowed to work the eglarufa? No. Yeah, paraduma, are you allowed to work paraduma? No. Where do they learn it from? You learn paraduma from the eglarufa, from all. Okay, fine. Are you allowed to have a mum in paraduma? No. Are you allowed to have a mum in eglarufa? Yes. Why? Because it says ba by the paraduma, so it's only paraduma that cannot have a mum. But by the eglarufa, you could have a mum. So says the Gemara, I want to make a kavachomer. If the eglarufa, right, I'm allowed to have a mum, right? I'm allowed to have a mum, and I'm not allowed to work it. I'm not allowed to work the animal, but but it's allowed to have a mum. So kochim, can it have a mum? A korban is not allowed to have a mum. There's no korban that's allowed to have a mum, right? The second has a mum, that's it, right? You can't bring it. It's pushed off. So therefore, if you cannot have a mum in a regular korban, kal v'chomer, that you can't work it. That's what we wanted to do. Kal v'chomer. So says the Gemara, that's why we have the ba by the eglarufa, that only the eglarufa you cannot work. So not by specifically, but not by any other type of kochim. Kochim, you're allowed to work it. That's why you needed the ba. Meaning, don't tell me that the ba of eglarufa is coming to teach you that it's only by the eglarufa, right? That you're not allowed to work it, but not by the paraduma. Really, paraduma is the same thing. So why do I have ba by the paraduma? By the eglarufa, sorry. I have the ba by eglarufa to teach you about kochim, to take away from kochim. That it's only by ba you cannot work, but you are allowed to work any other type of kochim. Okay? So ask the Gemara, I've got a question against this kal v'chomer. You know what the question against this is? Ma le'egla sheken shanim poslot ba. The eglarufa, shanim are poslot, not in other kochim. Meaning, by kochim, I'm allowed to come and bring certain animals. There's no limitation of how many years, right, is this animal, whatever it is, by kochim. Certain times I can only bring a certain amount of years, right? And then afterwards I have to bring another one. But the majority of kochim, right, it's not like korban pesach, you're right. There's a certain amount of years, right? That's what you said. There's certain ones that yes, but the majority of korbanot, chatat, olah, it could be a 10-year, par v'ayil or whatever it is that what you're bringing, right, for a shlamim, there's no problem. Yeah? So he says, atu kochim ileka the basar b'shanim. He says, one second, there's not any type of a kochim that it is going to be posel b'shanim. For sure there is. So kitzichra lehanach kochim the pasuk b'shanim. We're talking about those ones which are going to be posel and shanim, which means that there is going to be. So here brings down in the footnote, like what Mr. Monsieur Becker said, right? By korban pesach or korban chatat, that it has to be within the first year. Meaning by the korban pesach or korban chatat, it doesn't have to be within the first year. Those are the only ones which do have a statute of limitation. Meaning it's like a limit of an age limit, and then that's it. So because of those ones are the ones that we're talking about. So says the Gemara, are you going to tell me that kochim that you don't need to have, that it's not going to be pasul b'avodah? We learn it from the miyut of ba. He says mata nafka. We learn it from somewhere else. You know where we learn it from? From Parashat Emor, what we just said last week's parasha. What do we learn in last week's parasha? It says, Averet, o shavur, o charutz, o yabelet, o garav, o yalefet, lo takrivu ele laHashem, ele iyata makriv. Right? Yeah, we're talking about no, but these are kochim that have mumim. Kochim that have mumim. So it says, if it's an Averet, shavur, charutz, yabelet, garav, yalefet. You guys want to read in English, it's much easier. What Averet is obviously it's blind, broken,
with split
eyelids,
warts, dry skin eruption, moist skin eruption.
So these are different types of blemishes of mumim, which you're not allowed to bring to the korban. So when it says the word ele, right? Ele tamakriv, you can't bring these things. But you're allowed to bring kochim that they worked. Meaning, you're telling me, how do I know that you're allowed to work an animal, and then 5 minutes later bring this as a korban? So the Gemara says, you know how you know you're allowed to do it? Bah, by egla rufa. It says bah, by egla rufa. So only by egla rufa you're not allowed to work. But any other kochim you're allowed to work. Says the Gemara, that's where you learn it from. You learn it from ele. You learn it from this pasuk. Averet o shavuru charutz yebelu garav yebelu lo takrivu ele. Ele yata. You're not allowed to bring these ones, but these ones are the blemish. But working, you are allowed to. Answers the Gemara, itzrich. I need it. I need bah from egla rufa. Says why? I would have thought to say Hanimid, one of these words. Only if you worked an avodat heter. Avodat isur, but if you did an isur with it, I would have said that it's going to be asur because of the kavachomer of egla rufa. That's why you needed ba to teach you that even avodat isur is not going to come and be posel. What exactly is avodat isur? For example, you did kilaim, you put two different animals together to work. Shor v'chamor yachdav, like the ox and the donkey. Or, for example, you worked it on Shabbat. That's called avodat isur. Meaning, I would have thought to say, when is it permitted? If you did avodat heter. If you worked it beheter, so you're allowed to bring it as a korban. But let's say you worked the animal on Shabbat. So I would have thought to say, the fact that you worked it on Shabbat, it's asur to bring it as a korban. Comes to teach you that really behemet, the word ba teaches you that even avodat isur does not prohibit from a korban. Why? Because there's no prohibition on avodah by the animal. Okay? So says the Gemara, the hanami me'achanafka. Are you going to tell me that the word ba teaches you that even avodat isur? He says we learn it from somewhere else. It says umiyah ben echad lo takrivu lechem elokechem mikol ele. You're not allowed to bring also from the goy, from the non-Jew. You're also not allowed to bring the bread of God from all of these animals. It says over here, right? You're not allowed to bring, because of the mum, you're not allowed to bring these things, but you're allowed to bring anything else. So it comes out from here that since there's two different places by tzule mumim that you're allowed to come, and it's not going to be posel by avodah by kochim. One of them you use for avodat heter, and one of them you're going to use for avodat isur. Meaning the goy is going to come and he's going to use it for whatever he wants. So if he's going to work it on Shabbat or work it on these things, so what's the problem then? So says the Gemara. So now if I have two different places where you're learning, right, the heter of work, so one I'm going to apply for avodat heter, and one of them I'm going to apply for avodat isur. So why do I need the word ba? So says the Gemara, itzrich, I still need it. I would have thought to say, Hanimid, one of these words, Hechal de'avad bahen. When you do the avodah, kishen chuli, only when they're still mundane. Meaning, when did you work the animal? You worked that animal before it was a korban, when it was still chuli. But what happens? You made it kochim, and now you made it, and now you worked it. I would have said that it's going to be pasul, it's going to be asur. Sricha, that's when you need the word ba to teach you that even after you made it kochim, if you worked it, it's still kosher. Which means like this: I've got an animal right here. I come in and say, you know what, this animal is going to be my chatat or my olah. And then I worked it. Even though I worked it after it became kochim, because before we were talking about before it became kochim. Now we're talking after it became kochim, it's still kosher to bring as a korban. That's what it's coming to teach you. Where do you learn that word? Ba, from egla rufa. The other two, you needed avodat isur and avodat heter. That was for the word ele. Ele by regular Jew and ele from miyah ben echad, from the goy. But here we're talking about from the kochim, that after it became kochim, and it's still going to be kosher even though you worked it, you learn it from the word ba, from egla rufa. Okay? So fine. Says the Gemara gufa. Let's go back to what we spoke about. Amar of Yudah Rav says of you the name of Rav. If you place in the paraduma these chavilot, right? A chavila of sakim, you've got like sackcloths, right? That they were empty, and you tie them together, you put it on top of it. Psula, it's pasul. But to do the egla rufa, it's still kosher ad shetimshoch, until you're moshech it, right? That's what we just said. So the Gemara is going to ask, Meitvei, we're going to ask the following question: all, when it says the word ashelo la'aleh, all, that it didn't have any yoke on it, right? Any work on it, en yela all, that's only all. Shar avodot midayin, because an all is a burden. How do I know that it can't do any other work? So Amarta, you said kal v'chomer, just like the egla rufa, that emum posel ba shar avodot poslo ba, harash emum posel ba enodin shar avodot poslim ba. You come and you say like this. What do we just say? We said a kal v'chomer paraduma to egla rufa. If by the egla rufa there's no problem of a mum, and it's going to be prohibited any type of a work, not only an all, not only like a burden, any type of work is going to be a surah. So kal v'chomer, the paraduma, that a mum is posel, so any type of avodah should be posel. Any type of avodah is asur. So says the Gemara, v'im nafshecha lomar, now if you're going to tell me ne'emar kan all v'ne'emar lalan all, the gzera shava, all, ma lehalan shar avodot poslo ba, v'kana shar avodot poslo ba. Why don't I just say gzera shava? Why are you doing a kal v'chomer? Remember, a kal v'chomer, right, is less than a gzera shava. Gzera shava is stronger than a kal v'chomer. Gzera shava, right, is that you learned it from your rabbi, so that's a difference. Kal v'chomer you can make yourself. Gzera shava you have to learn from a masoret. It has to be a tradition. You're learning from your rabbi. The kal v'chomer is just logic. If I could carry 100 pounds, I could carry 50 pounds, right? It's kal v'chomer, right? I learned the kal from the chomer. The 50 pounds is much less than 100. So I'm learning the kal from the chamur, the lenient one from the stricter one. Kal v'chomer, right? The gzera shava, I just have 2 words, right? I do a word search. I've got a sort of from my rabbi. He told me that since it says the word here, boom, I connect them. I'm allowed to do that. But I cannot make a gzera shava from my own. Yeah, but there's a big difference. A kal v'chomer I could refute very easily. Why? I have a question, and all of a sudden I come and I show you that it's not kal, and all of a sudden I show you that there's a tzad chumrah or there's something, and all of a sudden now everything changes. So he says, so kal v'chomer I could refute. A gzera shava, you can't really refute. How are you going to refute a gzera shava? I learned it from my Rabbi. My Rabbi learned from his Rabbi. Each rabbi continue going up. How are you going to refute a gzera shava? Unless you didn't learn it. If you didn't learn a gzera shava, that's something else. I mean that from your Rav, you didn't learn it. So the gzera shava. So my nafshecha lomar v'chi teima. Now if you're going to tell me, you could have a question against it. What's the question? Ma le'egla sheken shanim poslo ba. Right. First of all, the egla rufa, it's got a maximum. By the paraduma, didn't have a maximum. Inami, or you could teach you kochim yochichu. What's the kochim? Shemum posel bekochim ve'en avodah posel b'hem. So ne'emar kan all ve'ne'emar le'alan all. So for that's why you needed the gzera shava. Ma le'halan, just like over there, shar avodot, afkan shar avodot. Right, which means that basically we're trying to come and we're saying that you could come and ask against the kal v'chomer, that the kal v'chomer you could ask against. What are you comparing egla rufa to avodah, right, or to anything else? Egla rufa, it's got shanim poslot, right? Or kodshim or yochichu are the kal v'chomer that a mum is posel in kodshim, but avodah is not posel. So therefore, if you didn't have a gzera shavav all, it would have been permitted to work the paraduma. Because if you don't have a gzera shavav all, so you would be able to work it. So that's why you have the gzera shava. That just like shar avodot is going to be posel, so too the shar avodot is going to be posel also by the paraduma. So says the Gemara, Mikom shebata, in the place where you came from, Mala halan ad shetimshoch, afkan shetimshoch. One second. What's the gzera shava? All, where are you learning it from? You're learning paraduma from egla rufa. What do we say by the egla rufa avodah? Was it enough just to put something on top of it? No. What did you have to do? You have to move it. You have to be moshech. So then says the Gemara. So what are you doing then? You're making a gzera shava. You're learning from egla rufa, but then you're becoming stricter, right? Are you holier than thou? Right? The paraduma is a holy cow. That's what they call it. Yeah, a holy cow. Right? But are you holier than thou? I'm saying you're learning from the egla rufa, but the egla rufa is not posel until you're moshech. So why is it the paraduma, right? It's must speak, right? That all you have to do is you just put it on top and that's posel. But the egla rufa, you have to be moshech. It's not just enough putting it on top. So if you're learning gzera shava from the egla rufa, it shouldn't be more strict from the mimakom shebata, from the place where you came from. So answers the Gemara, you're right. It's nahi. It's a machloket tanaim. What's a machloket tanaim? Teika demaiti la me'egla, veika demaiti la migufa de para. You're right. Some people come and they learn it from the egla. And if you learn it from the egla, you're right. At the end of the day, it doesn't make sense. But other people, they actually learn from the paraduma itself. Meaning, I don't need all to learn from egla. I already learned it from the paraduma in itself. Tanya, but let's learn the Braita. The Braita says, all, en liela all. That's only a yoke. Shar avodot minai. How do you know that other avodot also the same halacha? Tamulumar, asher lo ala alea all mikol makom. Which means that from any place, any type of a yoke, any type of a work. If so, why did it say dafka oak, all, which is yoke? All posel ben beshat avodah ben shelo beshat avodah. A burden, right, which is an all, right? A burden, it's going to be whether during the time of avodah or not time of avodah. You put something on top of it, kaddish. Shar avodot, any other type of a work, en poslot ela beshat avodah. It's only going to be a pasul if it's during the time of avodah, which means that only during the time of that. That's what they learn from the word all, but they're learning it from the paraduma in itself, right? That means they're learning it from mikol makom when it says en li ela asher lo ala all mikol makom, any type of a right, any type of an all. Ve'ema, so says the Gemara, asher lo ala alea all is a klal, right? Asher lo ala alea is a klal, all is a prat, klal ufrat, en baklal, elama shebeprat. What does that mean? You guys remember the klal ufrat? A klal is a generalization. Prat is a specification. Right? So you have asher lo ala alea. Nothing came on top of it. What does that mean, nothing came on top of it? That's a general rule. Nothing can come on top of the paraduma. When it tells me all, it's a specification. It's telling me what? A burden. All. So that's a prat. When you have a klal ufrat, right? Emma klal mashabeb prat. I pay attention to the prat. I pay attention to the specification, which is an all. So therefore, all in midachalin law. Why don't I just say that it's an only an all, not nothing else? Meaning you wanted to learn from the paraduma itself. You can't learn from the paraduma itself because it's klal ufrat. Once you have a klal ufrat, you only look in the prat. And in the perat, what you have? Only an all, not any other type of an avodah. Other avodah is other types of works. All is a burden. So if I have the specification that it has to be specifically a burden, it's only a burden. You can't learn anything else from it. So says the Gemara, no. When it says the word asher lo ala alea all, ribuyahu, it's coming to include. And therefore it's an inclusion. So when it says asher, it's coming to include anything, any type of a work. The Tanya namiga be'egla ki gavna. So says the Gemara, 1 second. But we learned the exact same thing by egla rufa. It says asher lo mashecha be'ol. En li ela all. I only know all. Shar avodah minayin, other avodot. How do we know you know how to do it? Tamulomar comes teach you asher lo ubadbah mikom makom, any type of an avodah. In ken if so matamulomar all. So what's it coming to teach you all? All posel ben mishat avodah ben mishol b'shabbat avodah. So an all, whether it's during the time of avodah or not, it's going to be posel. Other avodot, it's only going to be bishat avodah. So says the Gemara, ve'ema shelu badbah is a klal, all is a prat, klal ufrat, bichlal and shabbat prat, the exact same name. Meaning now I'm in a glarufa. Before we were in paraduma, now we're in a glarufa. By the glarufa, it also says the same thing, klal ufrat. It says the same thing, asher lo mashecha be'ol. So asher lo mashecha is a klal, all is a prat, right? Or the first asher lo badbah, right? And then the all is a prat. So klal ufrat, em beklal masher beprat. All in midiachrin elo. So says the Gemara, the same answer. Asher is a ribuyahu. The word asher is an inclusion. Okay? Until here we're clear? Okay, very good. Next. Another safek. Yeah, another safek, right? To do with the egla rufa. To do with meshichat all. Amar Rabbi Avhu. Says Rabbi Avhu. Ba minem Rabbi Yochanan. So they asked from Rabbi Yochanan. Meshichat all bekama. How much do you have to do meshicha? We just learned by the paraduma, it was enough just placing it on top. By the egla rufa, you have to pull it. How much do you have to pull it? How much? How far do you have to pull? 1 tad. So his answer to the Gemara, Amali kimlo all. The distance of the size of the yoke. The size of the yoke. That's what he says. So Ibailehu, so okay, fine. The size of the yoke. Ibailehu, so they ask, leorko lerochbo, the length or the width. You understood? The length or the width. Because sometimes the length is not the same as the width. So is it right? So he answers, Amar lehu haomer Rabbanan Rabbi Yaakov Shemeh. One rabbi said Rabbi Yaakov was his name. The Dim Farshim Rabbi Yochanan was explained to me that which Rabbi Yochanan said. Nemshichat ol lerochbo tefach. 1 tefach, 8 centimeters. That's all you need. 8 centimeters. So says the Gemara, so v'lei matefach. So why don't you just say a tefach? Remember, a tefach is like this, 8 centimeters. So you just say 8 centimeters. Says the Gemara, kamashmalan shura de all tefach. That with the minimum of a yoke is a tefach. Meaning if it's going to be less than a tefach, it's nothing. It's not a yoke. Okay? Lemay nafkamina. So he says over here, right? What's the nafkamina? Lemekach umemkar. When it's talking about all stam, that is when you're buying and selling. Because if I'm going to sell you something and it's going to be less than 8 centimeters of the width, zeklum, zerien. And shum davar here. There's nothing here. It's too small. So in order for it to be considered, right, the all, it has to be 1 tefach. Okay? Fine. Next. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Shaul. Says Rabbi Yochanan ben Shaul. Why is it that the Torah says to bring the gla by Nachal Etan to come and to atone, right, for the Ritzicha, for this murder? Right? Shelo asa perot. We're going to bring an egla still didn't make any fruits. It's still an egla. It can't have a baby. It's too young. So therefore, you avoid davar shelo asa perot, v'yaref, and you're going to make it an egla rufa in a place where it does not make perot. Because Nachal Etan because since Nachal Etan was always full of stones and very hard thing, it can never grow fruits. So because of that, you're going to bring something that didn't have fruits, and it's going to atone for something that's going to have fruits. So he says, and he's going to be a kapara for somebody that didn't have fruits. Because basically they killed somebody, so now you can't have fruits anymore. So Kilo is going to atone for that person. So says my perot, what is exactly perot? If you're going to tell me pidiyah ela me'ata, so now we're going to have a question. What? You're not going to do it in a zaken, in a saris, right? Or a saris en lo velo yachol yot lo yeladim, yeah, because hu lo ra'ui lo lid banim. A zaken gam ken hu lo ra'ui lo lid banim. So it's only because of that kilu shelo yachol la'asot perot, that he can't do perot. An elderly person, he can't have children anymore. And the same thing with a sterile person. A person that's sterile, he can't have children. So what, for him, you don't do a gladufa? Did we ever say such a thing? Says the Gemara, you're right. Ella lemitzvot. Right? He comes and he says, it means that he wasn't able to make perot. Perot is not physical children. Perot is mitzvot. He's not able to do any more mitzvot. So even if it's a sterile person or zaken, nothing to do with it. They could still do mitzvot. So now this guy cannot make any more mitzvot, so that he doesn't have any more perot. So they bring it back down to Nachal Etan, right? That it's going to be kashet, it's going to be hard. So how do we know that the word etan means kashet? So shneemar, as it says in a pasuk, is by Bilam, right? Memvav mubet. So it says etan moshavecha v'sim basela kinecha. What does it mean now? Etan moshavecha, your dwelling places will be etan. So he comes and he says, what does that mean? They're going to be chazak. They're going to be strong. And it says in the pasuk, which means the second part where it says it means that it's going to be mostearim. It's going to be hard. So that means that's what it means. It's going to be hard like the rocks. Acherim omrim. Who's acherim?
Ben Avuya.
Rabbi Meir. Acher is Elisha ben Avuya. Acherim shelaman me'acher is acherim. Is Rabbi Meir. Right, so acherim omrim acherim is Rabbi Meir comes and he says, "Minay le'etan shu yashan." How do we know that etan is yashan? That means it's not kashe, it's yashan. How do we know it's yashan? So he comes and he says, right? He comes and he says, "Shneimar goy etan hu, goy me'olam hu." He comes and he says, it's matsui from a long time ago. When it says goy etan hu, meaning that we are a nation in Yirmiyahu. That we are a nation which are very old, which means they're very strong, meaning that we come from a long time ago. That's we came from okay, so therefore that's why. So there's basically going to be a machloket. What does etan mean? Does etan mean old or etan means strong? Okay, next, 2 dots. So they're going to cut off its head, chop off its head from the back, right, with a big knife. My tama, why do we do this? he says that why do we cut off its head from the back? Because they do arifa from chatat haof. Remember the chatat haof, you zera shava, you also come and you do it be'oref. And therefore, just like the kohen is going to be moleket haof, right? He's going to do it by the neck. So too the eglah rufa is done by the neck. Remember, he comes and he takes his siporin, right, his nail, and that's how he does the melika. And the melika is from the back, right, by the neck area, from the back. So same thing. Exactly. Very difficult to do the melika. Umekoma. Now this place where you're going to do eglah rufa, it's asur milizro mila'aved, right? You're not allowed to work it. You're not allowed to plant it forever. When it says the kavanah is that we're talking about that you're not allowed to work it or anything in the past, which means that it's teaching us that you never worked it. These are the words of Rabbi Yoshia. Rabbi Yonatan says le'abad, from now on. I mean, there's machloket. Does it mean that you didn't work it, you never worked it, right? Or does it mean you never worked it, from now on you're never allowed to work it? Meaning from now on, you're never allowed to do anything here. Right? Is la shavar or le'aba? Okay, that's what the Gemara is asking. So Rava comes and he says lehaba. Really, be'emet, it's from now on you can't work it. Because nobody argues. It says v'lo yizarea, right? That when it says lo yizarea means in the future that you cannot plant it. Lo yizarea means you're not going to plant it obviously in the future. When is a machloket? In the past. Rabbi Yoshia holds miktiv. Does it say v'lo ya'aved, meaning the past tense? It's only on the atid. Ela shel lo ya'aved ktiv. Right? What does that mean? That it's only shelo ne'evad be'avar kasher laripa. Rabbi Yonatan miktiv shelo ne'evad lashon avar. It says shelo ne'evad. It's lashon atid. So therefore, it's only in the future, not in the past. Rabbi Yoshia he says asher she'avar mashma. The word asher means in the past. Rabbi Yonatan, he says asher is a ribuyahu. It's coming to include other things in the isur. So therefore, you cannot come and bring a proof to which tense that it is, whether it's going to be in the future or in the past. Okay. Next, 2 dots. But you're allowed to come and comb the flax or to take away stones. That's only going to be zriya. Other avodot, how do we know? Tamulomar comes teach you right? What does that mean? You're not going to come and you're not going to make it work in any case. If so, what does it come to teach you? That's not going to come and it's not going to plant us. To teach you just like zriya is going to be miuchad, which is going to be bigufa shel karka, afkol shehi bigufa shel karka, so too it's going to be in the actual body of the ground. When you come and you're flaxing, you're combing flax, you're not doing anything in the ground. The ground is the exact same thing. You're doing it on the animal. So that you're allowed to do. Meaning the yisur is something on the ground. Anything which you do above the ground, it's not the ground. You're not working the ground. You're working an animal right there. I don't care. So there's no problem. So ask the Gemara, ve'ema asher lo yaved bo klal ve'lo yizarea prat. Why don't we do like what we did before? When it says asher lo yaved bo, you didn't work it. It's a generalization. When you say lo yizarea, it's a specification. What type of work don't do on it? Don't plant. So it's specifics. So he says if you have klal ufrat, a generalization and specification, emba kelal elamasha beperat. You don't have in this generalization, but that which is in the specification, so that means you're not allowed to plant it. Other than planting, you could do whatever you want over there. Even in the ground, you could do whatever you want. And so the Gemara, asher lo yaved bo. The word asher is an inclusion. Once it's an inclusion, it's including anything, everything. Next, 2 dots. Ziknei rochtzin edem. The Ziknei, the elders of the city, they come and they wash their hands. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita, v'chol ziknei krovim el hachalal yichatzot yidehem ala eglah rufa b'nachal. So all the elders of the city, they're going, which are close to the deceased, they're going to wash their hands on the eglah rufa b'nachal. Shentam ulumar eglah rufa. Why does it say now you have to say eglah rufa all the time? So he says al mekom alifata shel eglah. Where you did the eglah rufa, that's where they're going to wash their hands. That's where they're washing their hands. And they're going to say, our hands did not spill this blood, and our eyes, right? And he says like this, and our eyes, right, did not see. What do you think that the elders of the Bedin are going to be shofech tamim? It says, but rather our hands did not come and exempt them from food, right? Or we did not let him go without leviyah. Meaning that if we would have seen him, we would have given him food. We would have accompanied him, leviyah, that's a mitzvah, to accompany somebody dalad amot minimum, but we would have done something. So Tanya, we learned in the Braita, Rabbi used to say, kofim leviyah. Do you know that we actually force which means betim come and they force somebody to do leviyah. Sheschara leviyah, alvaya en la shiur. With the schara de leviyah,
של אורח.
right? Yes.
זה נקרא אש שלו.
כן, בדיוק.
אבל בלי הלוויה זה אש.
נכון.
אומרים שמישהו נשרף לו.
אבל יש כאלה שאומרים שאשל זה לינה, לא לוויה, יש מחלוקת בגמרא.
אבל זה שמישהו פעם נתן ארוחה, ואירח את האורח, ולא ליווה אותו. חזר נהיה לו אש בבית.
אש בבית.
נשאר בלי הלוויה.
Abraham Avinu, he planted an eshel. The eshel was a tree. But eshel was also an acronym for achila shtiya. There's a machloket. This last one is lina or levia. Lina is sleeping, like a lodge, or levia is accompanying. So he said, very nicely, he said that if a person does not do the lamed, the last letter, which is accompanying, so the only thing that's left is achila shtiya, is esh, fired. So there was somebody that went and he traveled to someone and he didn't accompany him, right? That means he gave him to eat and drink, but he didn't accompany the guest. So he had a fire in his house, esh, because there's no eshel. Very nice. Yeah, so he says here, schar alvaya en la shiur. There's no shiur. שנאמר ויראו השומרים אשר יצא מן העיר ויאמרו לו הראינו נא למבוא העיר ועשינו לך חסד. וכתיב ונצאתם ויראם ממבוא העיר. They showed him. What chesed did they do with him? שכל אותה העיר הרגו לפי חרב. Everybody was killed. ואותו איש ושלו שילכו. And then they were sent. That means the entire city was killed out. And this person, because he did leviyah, nothing happened to him. Mamash, nothing happened to him. That's a powerful thing. This is talking about the Shevet of Ephraim and Menashe. So the Kivush Ha'ir Bet El. Yeah? So Mamash, imagine. Everybody was killed and they were protected. Everybody in the city was killed. They were protected. Because they accompanied. Vayelech Aish, Eretz Achitim, Vayiver Ir, Vayikra Shema Luz. Who's Shema the Yom Hazeh? Which one?
Luz Yerushalayim.
So this person came and he built a city and it was called Luz. And that's the name until today. Tanya, we learned in the Braita. He Luz, Shetzovim Be'Tchelet. This is the city of Luz that they come and they make the Tchelet in the city of Luz. He Luz Sheba Sancheriv Velo Bilbela. This is the city of Luz that the Sancheriv, the king of Assyria, came and he tried to, but he wasn't able to do anything, which means he didn't exile them. Nebuchadnezzar Velo Echriva. Nebuchadnezzar came and he didn't destroy it. And even the Malach HaMavet tell him Shulav Bo. Right? Even the Malach HaMavet has no permission to go into it. Ela Zekenim Sheba, but rather the elders, Zman Shedatan Katzal Lehem, when they're already too older, Yotzim Chutz HaChoma Vehem Metim. They go outside and then they die. Remember, this was the famous city of Luz, right? That nobody dies, used to die inside of the city of Luz, right? So he comes and he says, and it's a Devarim Kal Vachomer. He says, Uma Kanani Zeh, just like this Kanani Shalom. He didn't speak and he didn't even go right with his legs. He just showed him the path. Garam Atzala Lo Uzaroko. He saved himself and his children for generations. Somebody actually does leviyah with his feet. Imagine what reward he's going to get. But this guy didn't actually physically walk him. He just showed him where this next city is. So if he was protected him, his generation, so imagine a person that actually does leviyah. Imagine what reward he's going to get. So what did he show him? He went and he showed him, right, with his mouth. But he didn't actually say anything. He showed him with his finger. So this is the fact that he showed him with his finger. Means the fact he just showed him like this. He said, "Where's the closest city over there?" He showed with his finger. That was already enough to save him and all his children, generations, because he went and he did that. Okay. Sure. Next, now we're going to speak about leviyah. So we're already speaking about the mitzvah of accompanying people. Somebody goes on the path and he has no leviyah. Yasuk b'Torah. Minimum he should start learning Torah. Which means that the Divrei Torah, they are the Liviyat Chen. That's your Liviyah. Meaning you have to learn Torah when you're traveling. Okay? Do you know that Abraham was accompanied by Paro Melech Mitzrayim 4 parsaot? So because of 4 steps, he subjugated the Jews for 400 years. Right? Imagine what that is. 400 years for 4 steps. No? Yeah, it's a nice reward. 4 steps, 400 years. Yeah, Amar of Yudamara says in Rab. If you're going to come and you're going to accompany your friend for Amot, right? For sure, you're not going to be damaged. You're not going to be hurt on the rest of your path. Okay? Ravina, right? Ravina, he came Alvi el Rava bar Yitzchak, Abba Meod Ba'ir. So he says, Ravina, he came and he accompanied Rava bar Yitzchak for Amot in the city. After he went out, so all of a sudden he was going to be in danger, and he was saved because of the accompanying of Ravina, right? Tan Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita. Harav leTalmid adibura shel Eid. The rabbi to the Talmid, because here we're talking about the different distances that a person is obligated to come in to go with a person. So the rabbi to a Talmid until the ibura shel Eid, which is going out. Here it says the ibura shel Eid is until 70 and 2/3 amot of the Batei Eid. So means he goes out 70 amot. How much 70 amot? 35 meters. Make sense? 48 centimeters. Half a meter.
35 what?
Meters.
35 meters.
Makes sense.
100 feet.
Yeah, 35 meters. That's what you have to do. But 70, every amma is half a meter. It's 48. Yeah? So he says, Adi Bura Shalir, Chaver lechaver, a friend to another friend, Hum Shabbat. Alpayim amma, which is going to be just under a kilometer, 950 meters. Right? Or according to Chazon Ish, it's a little bit more. So 1.052, whatever. Tamil Rav, a student to the Rabbi, and no shiur. There's no shiur. Just continue walking. So he says, V'kama, Amar of Shishat at Parsa. So 1 parsa outside of the, right? Remember the 1 parsa is 4 mil. And every meal was 2,000 amot.
8,000.
So 8,000 amot. So 8,000. So we're talking about 4,000 meters. 4 kilometers. Yeah, 4 kilometers. V'lo amaran, and we didn't say this, Ela l'rabo shenu muvhak. That's only his rabbi that is known as Rab Muvhak. Avar rabo muvhak shalosh parsot. A rabbi that is fixed rabbi, that means his majority of the chokhmah comes from him, 3 parsot. So triple it by 3. What did you just tell me before? So it's before. So 12 kilometers. Okay. Yeah, you know what it is? 12 kilometers. Accompany your rabbi 12 kilometers. Okay?
And the way back,
yeah. Rav Kahana alve le Rav Shimi Barashi mimpum Nahara Beit Tzaniata de Bavel. So Rav Kahana, he accompanied Rav Shimi Barashi from the city of Pum Nahara until Beit Tzaniata de Bavel. Kimatu when they got there, Elmaleh, he says, Vadai Damritu, right? For sure, I heard Ani Tzaniata de Bavel Mishnei Adam Rishon. Do you know that these dekalim, they probably come from Adam Rishon? I mean, these palm trees in this city come from Adam Rishon. Elmaleh, he says, Al Kanta Minta, you reminded me something. Amar Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Chinan says, that in a land that nobody passed by there and nobody was dwelling there. If he didn't pass by there, so how does he live there? How does he dwell there if he doesn't pass by there? So he says, but rather, Ella, Eretz shegazar le Adam Rishon Yishuv mityashva. Eretz shelo gazar Adam Rishon Yishuv lo mityashva, which means Adam Rishon was the one that decided where people were going to live. He says, here, people are going to live. That's what people were living. Here, nobody's going to live. Nobody lived. That's what Adam Rishon, right? That means he was the one that made this kizra. Okay? Next. Rav Mordechai alveye l'Rav Ashi. Right? Rav Mordechai came and he accompanied Rav Ashi Mugranya ve'bekipe. Da'amle al-be'adura. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Meir. It says Rabbi Yochanan name Rabbi Meir. Kol she'em laveh u'mitlaveh. Anybody that does not come and he doesn't accompany other people and he's not accompanied, it's like he's being shofet tamim. Elmaleh livu anshei Yericho l'Elisha. If the people of Yericho would accompany Elisha when he came out of Iram, lo gira dubi letinokom. So then the Elisha would not be megared the dubim to the tinokot that they came and they started fooling around, right? I mean, basically he made a miracle, and then what happened was that the Ne'arim came and they started being mevazeoto. So since they came and they embarrassed the Navi, so therefore he came and he actually punished them. So there was a big problem there. Shneimar, they started laughing at him. Like bold one. So he said like as if he was bald. Yeah. So he comes and he says, right, as follows. Amrulo, they told him, Alei shikrachta alenu atamakom. Right, which means that you took from us like the parnasa. What does it mean now, Nari Muktanim? Amar Bilazar says Bilazar, Shemenurim mina mitzvot, Ktanim, Sheyu Ktanim Amana. So he says that they were actually empty from the mitzvot, and they were Ktanim, they were Ktanei Amuna. I mean that they weren't good people. These were, sometimes, like these foolish, probably tipeshes years or whatever it is, like when they're teenagers or whatever, they start fooling around and doing nonsense. Yeah? Until they start maturing. So he says, Tana, we learned in a Braita, Ne'arim ayu, they were Ne'arim. These vizu atzman ketanim, but they embarrassed themselves, they degraded themselves like the small children. So Matkif, Rav Yosef comes and he asks, the Dilma Hashem Ekoman. Maybe there was called Neuran, not because they were like Ne'arim, but rather that was the place where they came from. Milo Ktiv is not written, Ve'aram Yitzug Gedudim Yeshu, he said Na'ara Ktana. The Kashala Na'ara, and then he said Ktana, one second. Is it Na'ara Ktana? Ktana means a minor. Na'ara is between 12 and 12 and a half, so she's not a minor. So what was it? So he says, no, it's Ktana from Ne'oran. Ne'oran is a city. Not that she was a Na'ara, she was a minor, but from Ne'oran. So answers the Gemara, there it didn't say from where she came from. So if I say that if it says Na'ara, that's her place. Hacha here, it tells you where they came from. They came from Yericho. So if they're coming from Yericho, you're not going to say that Na'aran means also that they came from Na'aran, because you already told me that he comes from Yericho. So if they came from Yericho, so obviously it's not like that. So what happened? Elisha turned, he saw them, by Kalam b'Shem Hashem. He cursed them in the name of Hashem. Mara'a, what did he see? Amarav Ra'a Mamash. Unatam b'hem einav, and then he punished them with his eyes. Meaning Elisha just looked at them and he punished them. That's it. Come on. That would be cool, huh? You look at somebody and boom.
Yeah, she did just today.
Yeah, exactly. Like he just turns them into bones. Yeah? So he says, right? So he says, Kedetanians, we learned in the Braita, anytime the rabbis put their eyes on somebody, either means death or poverty. Because poverty is like death. So mamash, he looked at them, boom, either they died, dropped dead, or they became poor. Whichever one it was. One or the other. Shmuel says, he saw that every single one of these lads, their mothers became pregnant on Kippur. That means obviously they're not allowed to have relations on Kippur, but their mothers became pregnant on Kippur. That means they were having relations on Kippur. Rabbi Yitzchak ben Nafcha Amar, Blorit la'aleim. He saw that they had a, how do you call the blorit? You know, like the chuk, like the long, the long locks of hair. So he says like the goyim. Rabbi Yochanan says, he saw that they didn't have any type of mitzvot. So that's why, so he had to, the dilma bizar'ayu, right? Nihava hava. So maybe one second, maybe be'emet, their children would have done mitzvot. Meaning you always have to look in the children. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu had to say, Moshe Rabbeinu before killing the Egyptian, he had to see that there was nothing afterwards. So to here, did he see their children and everything? No, sub nothing. Not in them, and not in their children, nothing for generations. So that's why he went and he basically killed them out. Which one? So all of a sudden, there was two bears came out of the forest, and it went and it took 42 children. Right? Rav and Shmuel, one of them says, right, there was one miracle, one says Nes v'toch Nes, and then we'll speak about this miracle, B'ezrat Hashem, tomorrow.